Tom was a simple cargo pilot who spent most of his days flying between small space stations and dusty frontier planets. His ship, the Wanderer, was old but reliable. It had carried food, machinery, and sometimes even livestock to far-off colonies. Life was quiet, but it was also lonely. Tom often wished for something different, but he never imagined how different things could get. One calm evening, while drifting in orbit above a refueling station, Tom's comm screen flashed with a bright, golden message. It was written in a smooth alien script, followed by a translation in common trade language. The words read, "Honored guest, you are invited to the grand convergence of houses on the royal world of Ryom." Tom rubbed his eyes. A grand convergence sounded like some kind of trade event or cultural gathering. The message also mentioned opportunities for cross-species cooperation and exchange of goods. That was exactly the kind of work he needed. Trade routes into royal territories were hard to get, and attending such a gathering could open doors for his small business. Without thinking too much, he accepted the invitation and set course for Ryon. The journey took 4 days, through bright star fields and past drifting asteroid belts. He rehearsed polite greetings in his mind, planning how he would present himself to alien merchants. When Tom's ship entered Ryon's atmosphere, he was stunned by the view. The planet was covered in seas of silver-blue water, with islands that shone like jewels under the twin suns. Floating cities hovered above the waves, connected by glowing bridges of energy. The capital city, Lurith, rose like a crystal spire into the clouds. Landing at the main port, Tom found the air warm and scented with a strange floral aroma. Colorful banners stretched across every street. Crowds of aliens wearing shimmering robes filled the walkways, singing and carrying glowing lanterns. It seemed the whole city was celebrating something. This must be part of the conference, Tom thought, as he followed the flow of people toward the tallest building in the city. The sound of drums and stringed instruments echoed through the air. Attendants stood at the wide gates, smiling and offering guests long-stemmed flowers with petals that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Tom accepted one politely, thinking it was a welcome gift for visitors. The attendant said something in a musical voice, which his translator device rendered as, "May your presence honor the bond." That sounded like a polite greeting, so Tom nodded. Inside the grand hall, the space opened into a massive dome with walls covered in gold and blue patterns. Hundreds of alien guests stood in a wide circle, leaving a path down the center. At the far end of the hall, Tom saw a figure walking toward them. She was tall and graceful, her robe made of silver threads that shimmered like starlight. A crown of crystal rested on her head. Even from a distance, Tom could see her deep green eyes. The music slowed, and the crowd grew silent. Tom realized this was not the start of a trade meeting. This looked very much like a wedding. Before he could turn around and leave quietly, a group of royal guards noticed the flower in his hand. One of them gestured for him to step forward. Tom shook his head, trying to explain that he was in the wrong place, but the guard misunderstood his hesitation and guided him gently toward the center path. He felt heat rise to his face as every eye in the hall turned to watch him. He was now standing only a few steps from the woman in silver. The officiator, a tall alien elder with bright blue skin, spoke in a clear voice. The translator in Tom's ear whispered, "The presence of the chosen bearer completes the prophecy." Tom froze. Chosen bearer? Prophecy? This was not good. The elder continued. "By the will of the stars and the bond of the houses, let the union be sealed." Before Tom could protest, the princess, because it was now clear she was a princess, placed her hand in his. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some threw flower petals into the air, while others sang a rising note that filled the dome. Tom's mind raced. He had come here for a trade conference. Now, somehow, he was part of a royal wedding ceremony. He tried to pull the princess aside to explain, But the music grew louder and the crowd began to close in around them. The guards guided the pair toward a raised platform where they bowed to the crowd. From the way everyone was smiling, Tom realized that the people believed this was meant to happen. To them, it was not a mistake. It was fate. As the ceremony ended, attendants placed a light ceremonial cloak over Tom's shoulders. The princess glanced at him with a calm but unreadable expression. She leaned slightly toward him and whispered something in her own language. His translator took a moment before giving the words, "You are either the bravest man here or the most lost." Tom gave a weak smile. Definitely the second one. But deep inside, he had a feeling that whatever had just happened, it was going to change his life completely. The hall doors opened, and the new couple was led outside into the bright city streets. Cheers followed them, and in the distance, fireworks exploded in patterns across the twin suns. Tom still didn't know how he had gotten into this situation, but one thing was certain. There was no easy way out. Tom walked beside Princess Alira as the cheering crowd followed them through the bright streets. Every step felt unreal. The warm breeze carried the scent of sweet flowers, and ribbons of light floated in the air like glowing birds. Yet all Tom could think about was that he had just been mistaken for the bridegroom in a royal wedding. They reached a smaller hall behind the palace, where guards stood in neat rows. The tall doors opened, revealing a wide chamber with walls of polished stone and a fountain in the center. The sound of water echoed softly. Inside, a group of richly dressed aliens stood waiting. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to open disapproval. These were the royal council members. Tom could tell from their elaborate clothing and the way they stood in a half circle, as if ready to pass judgment. The first to speak was an older alien with silver skin and narrow eyes. His voice was deep and slow. "Princess Alira, this man is human." Another council member, a woman with golden scales along her face, replied sharply, "It is obvious he is human. The question is why he stands in the place of the chosen prince." Tom raised his hands. "I think there has been a mistake. I was just—" But his words trailed off when he realized most of them were not wearing translator devices. Only the princess seemed to understand him. Alira turned to the council and spoke in her own language. Her tone was calm, but Tom noticed the way her fingers tightened slightly at her sides. The translator in his ear caught part of it. "He is not a threat. The ritual was witnessed by all. The bond is sealed." The silver-skinned elder frowned. "By law, the union is valid, but this is highly irregular. The chosen suitor from House Varen has been insulted." A low murmur filled the chamber. Tom caught only pieces of the discussion, words like prophecy, honor, and treaty. The princess stepped closer to him and spoke quietly in common trade language. "You must come with me. We will speak in private." He nodded quickly. Anything was better than standing in the middle of a political storm he did not understand. Alira led him through winding palace corridors decorated with flowing banners and glowing crystal lanterns. At last, they entered a smaller room with a wide window overlooking the ocean. The soft crash of waves filled the silence. She turned to face him. "You do not belong here, that much is clear. Tell me why you came to the hall." Tom explained everything: how he had received the invitation, how he thought it was a trade event, and how he followed the crowd without realizing it was a wedding. As he spoke, her expression shifted from suspicion to reluctant amusement. "You walked into the most important ceremony of my life thinking it was a market?" she said. "Pretty much," Tom admitted. "Worst case of wrong place, wrong time in the galaxy." She sighed and looked out the window. "The problem is bigger than you know. The convergence was meant to unite my house with House Varen. Their prince was to stand beside me today. The ceremony you took part in follows ancient law. The crowd's belief sealed the union. Breaking it now would bring dishonor not only to my family, but to the empire itself." Tom rubbed his forehead. "So I can't just explain this to everyone and go home?" "No," she said firmly. "The law does not care for explanations. It cares for appearances. To end this without conflict, we must act carefully. Before." Tom could ask what carefully meant. The door opened and a tall man in dark robes entered. His sharp features and cold gaze made Tom uneasy. This was High Minister Ralos, the Emperor's chief advisor. He studied Tom like a rare insect. "So, this is the human," he said slowly. "Fate works in strange ways. The Emperor has decided you will remain by the princess's side, at least for now." Tom straightened. "For how long is for now?" Ralos ignored the question and continued. "Your presence could be useful. The Empire has long sought stronger relations with humans. A public union could serve as a bridge between our peoples. But there are those who will see you as an intruder. You must be ready for opposition." The minister left as swiftly as he came, leaving behind a heavy silence. Alira's gaze softened slightly. "If you agree to stay, it will be for 1 year. We will play the part of a married couple in public. In private, you will be free to keep your own space. When the year ends, we can dissolve the bond without scandal." Tom hesitated. "And if I say no?" "Then," she said, her voice quieter, "you will be sent away under the dishonor law. That could end in conflict between our peoples. Many would suffer." Tom leaned back against the wall, taking in the situation. He had come here looking for work. Now he was being told he might have to pretend to be married to an alien princess for an entire year to prevent a diplomatic disaster. It sounded impossible. It also sounded like he had no real choice. Later that evening, a formal announcement was made to the city. Standing beside Alira on the palace balcony, Tom looked out at a sea of glowing lights as the citizens celebrated. The translator device whispered the Emperor's speech in his ear. "By the will of the stars, our princess has found her partner not in the halls of power, but in the vastness of space. This union marks a new chapter for Ryan and the human worlds." The cheers were deafening. Tom forced a smile for the crowd. Alira stood perfectly still beside him, regal and calm, though he thought he caught a faint hint of amusement in her eyes. When they returned inside, she said quietly, "Welcome to your new life, Tom." He let out a slow breath. "I still have no idea how I'm going to survive a year of this." "Then take it one day at a time," she replied. "That is how I survive being a princess." For the first time since he stepped into the hall, Tom felt a small spark of curiosity about what the year ahead might bring. The morning after the announcement, Tom woke in a guest chamber within the palace. The room was larger than his entire ship, with tall windows looking over the ocean and a bed so soft he felt like he was sinking into clouds. For a moment he almost forgot he was supposed to be the husband of a princess. Almost. A gentle chime sounded from the wall. The door slid open, and an attendant entered, carrying folded clothes in shades of silver and blue. "For the public duties," the attendant said in common trade language before bowing and leaving. Tom sighed. Public duties. That was a phrase he was going to have to get used to. By midday, he was walking beside Princess Alira through the marble halls of the palace. Everywhere they went, guards stood at attention and palace workers bowed. Tom felt eyes following him, some curious, some cold. They entered the council hall, a circular chamber with high ceilings and banners of the royal crest. Seated in a half circle were the council members, their robes as bright as gemstones. The silver-skinned elder from the day before was there, along with the golden-scaled woman and several others Tom had not yet met. Alira spoke first, addressing the council in her native language. The translator in Tom's ear whispered the meaning. "The union stands as witnessed by the people. Let us move forward." The golden-scaled woman leaned forward. "Move forward?" "The chosen heir of House Varen is humiliated. His family demands an explanation. If they do not receive one, they may see this as a deliberate insult." Tom kept still, remembering Alira's advice to let her speak. The silver-skinned elder added, "And what of the prophecy? It spoke of a stranger from beyond the stars who would join the royal line. But prophecies are dangerous things. They can inspire hope or they can stir rebellion." Alira's voice was calm. "The prophecy is not a threat. This union can strengthen our ties with humans. That is what matters." But Tom could sense the tension. Some of the council clearly wanted him gone. Others seemed unsure, perhaps weighing the political benefits. After the meeting, Alira led Tom to a quieter corridor. "The council is divided," she said softly. "Some will try to use you to their advantage. Others will try to remove you. You must be careful who you trust." "Remove me how?" Tom asked. "In the political sense," she replied, "though I would not rule out less polite methods." Tom frowned. "That's comforting." Over the next few days, Tom was introduced to the rhythms of royal life. He attended formal dinners where guests spoke in riddles and compliments that hid deeper meanings. He stood beside Alira during public appearances, smiling for the crowds. And he learned that in the palace, information traveled faster than light. One afternoon, while walking in the palace gardens, Tom overheard two courtiers whispering near a fountain. "House Varen will not let this stand," one said. "They will demand justice." "Justice or revenge," the other replied. "There are those who say the human is a danger, that he is here to spy on us." Tom moved away before they could notice him, but their words stayed with him. It was clear some people saw him as more than just an accident. To them, he was a threat. That evening, Alira invited him to a private dinner in her study. The room was filled with books, maps, and glowing crystal globes. She poured them both a drink, made from a sweet, golden fruit. "You have been hearing things," she said, reading his expression. "People think I'm a spy," Tom replied. "Some think I'm part of a prophecy. Some just want me gone. I didn't sign up for this." "No," she agreed. "But you are here now. And if we are to survive the year, we must work together. The council listens to strength. If they see you as weak, they will push harder to remove you." Tom leaned back. "So what's the plan?" "For now," she said, "we travel. There are provinces I must visit to settle disputes. You will come with me. If the people see you helping their princess, they will speak in your favor. Public opinion can be more powerful than council votes." The next morning, their journey began. They traveled in a sleek royal vessel that skimmed above the ocean waves, heading toward distant islands. The first province they visited was a mining colony built into the side of a cliff. The miners worked with strange, glowing crystals that powered much of the Empire's technology. The colony leader, a broad-shouldered alien with skin like polished stone, bowed deeply to Alira, but looked Tom over with wary eyes. "This is your chosen partner?" he asked in common trade language. "He is here to observe and assist," Alira said simply. During the visit, Tom listened more than he spoke, watching how Alira handled complaints and disputes. When a section of the mine collapsed unexpectedly, trapping 3 miners, Tom acted without thinking. He rushed to the scene, using tools from a nearby storage shed to help the rescue team. Hours later, the miners were freed, tired but alive. By the time they left the colony, Tom noticed a change. The workers who had barely acknowledged him before were now offering small bows and respectful nods. As the royal vessel sailed toward the next province, Alira stood beside Tom on the deck, looking out at the sea. "That was well done," she said. "I just did what anyone would have," he replied. "Not anyone," she said. "Some would have stood aside and let others take the risk. Actions speak louder than words, Tom. The people saw what you did. They will remember it." For the first time since the wedding, Tom felt like he might have a chance to prove himself. Not to win their hearts completely, but enough to make it through the year without constant danger. But far away, in the shadowed halls of House Varen, plans were already forming, and not all of them involved politics. The royal vessel returned to the capital after several days of travel. Tom expected that he and Alira would have some time to rest before their next public duty. Instead, they were summoned to the Emperor's private council room early the next morning. The chamber was quiet and grand, with high windows that let in the light of both suns. The Emperor sat on a raised seat, dressed in dark robes embroidered with silver threads that caught the light when he moved. His gaze was steady and sharp, the kind of look that made Tom feel as though every thought in his head was being measured. Alira stepped forward and bowed. Tom followed her lead, giving a respectful nod. The Emperor spoke in a deep voice. The translator in Tom's ear caught the words a moment later. "Your union has caused great waves across the Empire. Some see it as a mistake, others as a sign of destiny. I intend to make it a symbol of unity." Alira listened without expression. "And how do you intend to do that?" "You will both travel to the major provinces," the Emperor said. "You will appear together, settle disputes together, and speak with one voice. You will show the Empire that humans and Ryanese can work side by side. This is no longer only about the bond between you, it is about the bond between our worlds." Tom could tell this was not a request. It was an order. Alira inclined her head slightly, "As you command." That afternoon, preparations began. A larger, more heavily guarded royal ship was readied for the journey. Dozens of attendants loaded supplies, gifts for the provinces, and ceremonial outfits. Tom was given a set of formal clothing in deep blue trimmed with silver, matching Alira's robes. Before they departed, Alira pulled Tom aside. "This will not be an easy journey. In some places we will be welcomed. In others, we will be challenged. You must be ready to act as if we are united, no matter what happens." Tom gave a small nod. "I understand. 1 Ryanese year. That was the deal." Her eyes held his for a moment before she turned away. Their first destination was the agricultural province of Harun, a lush world of green valleys and golden fields. When they arrived, the local governor welcomed them with a feast under the open sky. Musicians played soft tunes while dancers moved in circles around a central fire. Tom followed Alira's lead, speaking politely to the farmers and learning about their crops. When a dispute arose between 2 farming clans over irrigation rights, Alira listened carefully to each side, then proposed a shared schedule that gave both groups enough water. Tom added a suggestion of his own, using a human-designed water storage system he had seen on frontier worlds. The idea caught the farmers' interest, and they agreed to test it. By the end of the visit, the mood was warm, and the governor sent them off with baskets of fruit as gifts. Their next stop was less friendly. The industrial province of Delvar was a city of steel towers and constant machine noise. The local leader, a stern man named Vesk, received them formally but without warmth. During the public meeting, a group of citizens shouted questions at Tom. "Why is a human in our royal line? What does he know of our ways? Can he even speak our language without a machine?" Tom's translator hummed in his ear, giving him the meaning. He felt the weight of the crowd's stares. Alira stepped forward before he could answer. "He learns quickly," she said firmly. "He has already aided our people during his travels. Judge him by his actions, not by his origins." Some in the crowd seemed satisfied, but others still looked doubtful. As they left the hall, Tom felt the tension hanging in the air. That night, in their private quarters, he spoke quietly to Alira. "I'm starting to think some people will never accept me, no matter what I do." She regarded him thoughtfully. "Perhaps not. But the purpose is not to win every heart. It is to win enough that the others cannot speak against you without looking foolish." Days turned into weeks as their journey continued. In some provinces, they were celebrated with parades. In others, they faced cold stares and whispered doubts. But slowly, Tom began to notice a change. When he listened, when he offered help, when he stood beside Alira during disputes, the people started to speak of them as a pair rather than as two strangers forced together. One evening, while their ship was crossing a stretch of open sea between islands, Alira joined Tom on the observation deck. The sky was a deep violet, the suns sinking low, their light reflecting on the waves. "You are adjusting," she said. "I guess I am," Tom replied. "It's still strange, but maybe not as bad as I thought it would be." She gave a faint smile. "You are less of a burden than I feared," Tom chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." But not everyone was pleased with the growing unity. In the capital, High Minister Ralos met with two cloaked figures in a dim chamber. "The human is gaining support," one of the figures said. "If this continues, removing him will be much harder." Ralos's eyes narrowed. "Then we must act before that happens. If an accident were to occur during their travels, the people would grieve the loss, but not question it for long. Begin your preparations." The first sign of trouble came during their visit to the province of Virela, a city built on floating platforms anchored to the ocean floor. It was known for its grand festivals, where the streets were filled with glowing lanterns and music echoed across the waves. As part of the celebration, Alira and Tom stood on a high balcony to watch the fireworks. The air was warm, and the crowd's cheers rose with each burst of light in the sky. Tom leaned toward Alira. "It's almost peaceful." At that moment, something flickered in the corner of his vision, a shadow moving quickly along the edge of the balcony. His instincts kicked in. He grabbed Alira's arm and pulled her down, just as a small device shot past them and exploded against the wall. The blast was sharp but controlled, meant to harm only those on the balcony. Guards rushed in, but the attacker had already vanished into the crowd. Alira's eyes were wide, but her voice was steady. "That was no accident," Tom nodded grimly. "And I don't think it will be the last attempt." The festival continued below, but the mood between them had shifted. They now knew their journey was not only about politics, it was about survival. The night after the attack in Virela, the royal guards doubled their numbers around Tom and Alira's quarters. The floating city outside was still bright with festival lights, but inside the palace walls the air was tense. Tom sat at a small table, looking over the events of the day in his mind. He had been close enough to see the glint of the attacker's weapon, close enough to feel the heat of the blast when it hit the wall. If he had not reacted in time, Alira might have been seriously hurt, or worse. Alira entered the room quietly, dressed in a simple robe instead of her ceremonial clothes. She carried 2 cups of steaming tea and placed one in front of him. "It is a drink made from local herbs," she said. "It helps clear the mind." Tom took the cup. "Thanks. Think I need that?" She sat across from him, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. "You saved my life today. That is not a small thing." "I just acted," Tom replied. "Anyone would have." "Not anyone," she said softly. "You are a stranger here, with every reason to protect yourself first. Yet you put yourself in danger without hesitation." Tom shrugged. "I guess that's just how I was raised. You help the person next to you." For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by the gentle hum of the floating city's engines. The next morning, they met with the local governor of Virela, who promised a full investigation. The governor's voice was polite, but Tom could sense hesitation in his tone. Attacks on visiting royals were rare, and whoever had done this was likely protected by someone powerful. When they returned to their ship, Alira called for a private meeting with her security chief, a tall Ryanese officer named Varin. "We cannot treat this as an isolated act," she told him. "Double the guard for all public events, and begin gathering intelligence on any groups tied to House Varin." Varin bowed. "As you command, Princess." Tom leaned against the wall, listening. "You think this is connected to the council?" "I think," Alira said, "that enemies often hide behind the illusion of politics. We must watch both the shadows and the light." Their journey continued, but the atmosphere had changed. Guards now scanned every crowd carefully. Tom noticed that Alira rarely turned her back to anyone, even in supposedly safe areas. In the province of Kalren, they visited a school for young engineers. The students were eager to show their inventions: small flying drones, new energy storage, cells, and even a water purifier designed to work in harsh environments. One young student, no older than 12, shyly asked Tom about life among the human colonies. Tom knelt to speak to her at eye level, explaining the wide deserts of some worlds, the frozen oceans of others, and how people built homes to survive in both extremes. The girl's eyes lit up with wonder. Alira watched from a short distance, her lips curling into the faintest smile. She noticed how easily Tom connected with people, even in a place where he was an outsider. That ability was not something that could be learned from a book or taught in royal training. That evening, as they prepared to leave Kalren, Alira invited Tom to walk with her along the edge of the landing platform. The sun was setting over the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. "You spoke to those students with patience," she said. "You made them curious, and you made them feel heard." Tom glanced at her. "They reminded me of kids back home, full of ideas, but needing someone to tell them it's worth trying. You would have made a good teacher," she said thoughtfully. "I like fixing ships," Tom replied. "But maybe in another life. Who knows?" For a moment they stood in silence, watching the last of the sunlight fade over the horizon. In the weeks that followed, they faced new challenges together. In one province, a river had overflowed, flooding the homes of hundreds of families. Tom joined the local workers in building barriers, while Alira organized supply deliveries and temporary shelters. In another province, rival fishing clans were on the brink of open conflict. Tom surprised Alira by suggesting a shared offshore platform where both sides could fish together under joint rules. The idea was accepted after a tense debate, and for once the two clans ended a meeting without shouting. With each success, Tom's reputation grew. More and more people began to see him not as a foreign intruder, but as someone willing to work for the good of the empire. One night, aboard their ship as it sailed toward the next province, Tom and Alira shared a late meal in the quiet dining room. The crew had long since retired for the evening, and the only sounds were the gentle creak of the vessel and the soft splash of waves below. "You have changed since we first met," Alira said. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Changed how?" "You were cautious, always watching for a way out," she replied. "Now you step forward without hesitation. You speak to my people as if you have always been among them." "I guess I stopped thinking about just getting through the year," Tom admitted. "I started thinking about what I could actually do while I'm here." Alira nodded slowly. "That is the way of leadership. It comes not from wanting power, but from wanting to help." There was a warmth in her voice that had not been there before. Tom noticed it, but said nothing. Still, danger followed them. In the bustling market district of their next stop, a trader tried to slip a poisoned fruit into a basket meant for Alira. The attempt was caught in time by a sharp-eyed guard, but it was another reminder that their enemies were not giving up. That evening, as they prepared to rest, Tom found Alira standing on the balcony of her quarters, looking out at the dark ocean. "They will keep trying," she said quietly. "Then we keep watching," Tom replied. "And we keep moving forward." She turned to face him, the light of the moons reflecting in her green eyes. "I did not choose you, but I am glad you are here." Tom felt the weight of those words, and for the first time since the day they met, he did not think of himself as a man trapped in a mistake. He thought of himself as her partner, at least for now. The sun had barely risen over the floating city of Varela when alarms echoed through the streets. Tom and Princess Alira had been preparing for a day of public appearances, visiting schools, markets, and the Grand Council chamber. The city was normally peaceful, but now guards ran in all directions, shouting orders. Tom felt a cold knot of fear tighten in his stomach. He had seen the shadow of danger before, but he had hoped the previous attack had been an isolated incident. Now it was clear someone wanted to harm them, and the risk was closer than ever. Alira appeared at the doorway, her robes fluttering slightly in the morning breeze. She had a calm expression, but her eyes were sharp and alert. "What is happening?" Tom asked. "A planned attack," she said. "We are to be protected at all costs, but the timing is not yet clear. We must move quickly." Guards formed a tight circle around them, ushering the royal pair toward the secure council hall. The streets outside were filled with shouting citizens, some frightened, others curious. Tom kept a hand close to the side of his uniform, ready to act if necessary. Inside the council hall, Alira addressed her security chief, Varen. "Check all entrances. Nobody enters without my knowledge. Make sure the citizens nearby are kept safe. We cannot let panic spread." Varen nodded and barked orders to his team. "Seal all access points. Spread the guards along the perimeter." Tom watched as the crew moved efficiently. He could see the strain on Alira's face. Even as a princess, she carried the weight of responsibility for thousands of lives, and he realized how much courage it took to remain calm under such pressure. As the day passed, the attackers made their move. A group of masked figures emerged from the upper platforms, moving swiftly through the crowd toward the balcony where Tom and Alira were scheduled to give a speech. Tom noticed the movement instantly. His heart raced, but his mind was clear. He grabbed Alira's arm and pulled her down behind a protective barrier as the first figures reached the balcony. Guards reacted immediately, engaging the attackers in a coordinated defense. The fight was brief but intense. The masked figures used small weapons designed to injure, but the royal guards held them back. Tom jumped in when one attacker broke past the initial line, using his knowledge of human combat techniques to subdue the intruder until the guards could take over. Alira watched calmly from behind the barrier. When the immediate threat passed, she turned to Tom. "You were very brave," she said. "You risked yourself without hesitation." Tom shook his head. "I couldn't let them reach you." "Not after everything we've been through." Her green eyes softened. "And I am grateful. You did more than anyone could have expected." After the attack, the Emperor sent a message that shook the capital. He had convened a council to decide the next steps regarding security and political alliances. Tom and Alira were called to the main hall, where the council members were gathered, their expressions serious and anxious. The silver-skinned elder spoke first. "This attempt on the princess's life shows the depth of opposition to the union. It is no longer a question of public acceptance. It is a matter of survival." The golden-scaled council member added, "The human is not merely a symbolic partner. He has proven his courage. His presence is a statement. We must now acknowledge him as more than an accidental guest." Alira turned to Tom. "Your actions today have shown what I have already suspected. You are capable, brave, and loyal. This council will recognize you as my equal in public duties, at least for the time being." Tom felt a mixture of pride and anxiety. The recognition was welcome, but it also meant that his safety was directly tied to the political machinations of the Empire. In the following days, Tom and Alira worked closely with Varan and the royal security team. They reviewed patrol routes, reinforced the palace defenses, and trained in emergency protocols. Tom learned quickly, using his human experience, to suggest improvements in crowd control and emergency evacuation. During this time, Alira and Tom spent more hours together than ever before. They shared meals in quiet corners of the palace, discussed the needs of the provinces, and even practiced drills for public appearances. The shared responsibility and reliance on each other began to deepen their connection. One evening, as they walked along the balcony overlooking the city, Alira spoke softly. "I never imagined that a human could handle this life, let alone face danger with such courage." Tom looked at her, feeling the truth in her words. "I never imagined I would be here, and I certainly never imagined being part of your life like this." She glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps what fate brought us together is no longer an accident. Perhaps it is the beginning of something real." Tom felt a strange warmth in his chest. For the first time since arriving, he allowed himself to believe that he might belong here, that he might not simply be a pawn in a political game. However, the threat was not yet gone. Intelligence gathered by Varan revealed that the attackers were linked to a faction within House Varan who opposed the human alliance. They were planning more sophisticated strikes, not just random attacks. Alira and Tom decided to take proactive measures. They traveled in disguise to observe potential trouble spots, meeting with local leaders and scouts to uncover plots before they could be carried out. Tom's human intuition, combined with Alira's knowledge of Ryanese culture and politics, made them an effective team. During one scouting mission, they discovered a hidden storage area where weapons and devices had been prepared for future attacks. They reported the findings immediately, allowing Varan's forces to secure the location and prevent further danger. As days turned into weeks, the bond between Tom and Alira strengthened. They trusted each other implicitly, not just for safety, but for guidance. Tom had learned the value of patience and strategy, while Alira appreciated his quick thinking and bravery. Together, they balanced caution with action, and their collaboration began to inspire those around them. One night, after a long day of planning, Tom found himself alone with Alira on the observation deck. The city lights reflected in her eyes, and she smiled softly. "You are no longer the stranger who stumbled into my wedding," she said. "You are my partner, in thought and in action." Tom nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "And I am glad to be here. I would do anything to protect you and this empire." She placed a hand lightly on his arm. "And I believe you will. We are stronger together than apart. Remember that." For the first time, Tom felt that the danger surrounding them was not just a trial, but a bridge to understanding, trust, and perhaps something even deeper. The capital city of Rayón was alive with preparations. A grand ceremony had been announced to celebrate the success of Princess Alira and Tom's union. Months of traveling, public appearances, and confronting danger had earned them recognition throughout the empire. But this celebration was more than an honor. It was a test. The council and nobles would judge if the human truly belonged at Alira's side. Tom looked out from the palace balcony at the crowded streets below. Citizens waved flags, shouted cheers, and displayed banners painted with both human and Ryanese symbols. He felt pride and fear at the same time. He had survived assassination attempts, political opposition, and cultural challenges. Yet now he had to prove himself in front of thousands of people and the entire council. Alira joined him quietly. She was dressed in a flowing gown of deep emerald, trimmed with silver threads that glowed faintly under the light of the setting suns. "You look nervous," she said, her voice calm but teasing. "I am," Tom admitted. "I've faced danger in many forms, but this is different. Everyone is watching. Alira smiled faintly. Remember what we have learned. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite fear. You have already shown courage more times than I can count. Today is only one more step. The ceremony began in the grand hall of the palace. Nobles and council members filled the high-ceilinged chamber. The emperor sat at the center, his expression serious but approving. The air was tense, a mixture of expectation and curiosity. The silver-skinned elder stood first, addressing the assembly. Over the past months, we have witnessed the human's deeds. He has saved lives, solved disputes, and helped the princess navigate challenges that required courage and wisdom. His presence has strengthened the empire in ways few expected, the golden-scaled council member added. We have observed him in both public and private duties. He has earned respect through actions, not titles. It is clear that the princess is no longer alone in leadership. Together, they are capable of guiding our people. Tom felt his heart beat faster. Recognition from the council meant everything. The months of trials had led to this moment. The emperor's voice filled the hall. By law, by public observation, and by deeds performed, the human Tom is hereby acknowledged as a partner of Princess Alira. The empire sees in him loyalty, courage, and wisdom. Let his actions inspire all who serve Ryan and the human worlds. Applause erupted throughout the hall. Tom looked at Alira, whose eyes shone with pride. He realized that they had achieved something remarkable. They had not only survived, they had earned trust, respect, and unity. After the formal recognition, the emperor approached them privately. His presence commanded attention, yet his voice was gentle. Your journey together has proven that alliances can be built on more than law. They can be built on understanding and courage. But know this, the political balance of the empire will continue to challenge you. You must remain vigilant, yet always remember to rely on one another. Tom nodded solemnly. We will do our best, Your Majesty. Alira gave him a reassuring smile. We will face it together. The following weeks were quieter. Tom and Alira traveled to the remaining provinces, no longer under constant threat. They were welcomed with open arms, and in each location, they were able to leave a lasting impact. New schools, improved infrastructure, and stronger ties between human and Ryanese communities. Tom had grown in confidence. He no longer felt like an accidental guest. He was part of something larger, a union that represented hope and cooperation. Alira, too, had changed. She had learned to trust another completely, to rely on someone who had entered her life by chance and stayed by choice. Their partnership had evolved into genuine companionship, and hints of affection were visible to those who knew them well. One evening, while resting on the palace balcony, Tom turned to Alira. Do you ever think about the day we met? How I just stumbled into your wedding? Alira laughed softly. How could I forget? I thought it was a disaster at first, but now I see it was fate in disguise. You changed everything. Tom hesitated, then said quietly, I never expected to be part of this world, part of your life. But I am glad I am. You made me feel like I belong here. Alira reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining. And you have made me feel that I can rely on someone outside of the empire. Someone from beyond our stars. Together we are stronger than I ever imagined. For a long moment, they simply held hands, looking out at the twin suns setting on the horizon. The peace was not just political, it had become personal. They had faced danger together, solved challenges together, and now shared moments of quiet, understanding. Tom realized that the year that had seemed so long and impossible was ending not as a burden, but as a bridge to a new life. On the final day of their official duties, the emperor held a private audience. He spoke to them with solemn approval. The empire is safe, stronger, and more united because of both of you. Your bond is recognized by law, by the council, and by the people. Choose how you will continue your journey together. Tom looked at Alira. The decision was not about law or duty anymore. It was about trust, companionship, and something deeper. I choose to stay, Tom said firmly, not because I have to, but because I want to. I want to face the future with you, side by side. Alira's eyes glowed with relief and joy. Then we will face it together, she said softly. The emperor nodded. So be it. Let this union not merely be one of law, but one of choice and purpose. In the days that followed, the city celebrated not only the union, but the cooperation between worlds. Tom and Alira walked among the people openly, no longer as strangers forced together, but as partners, respected and admired. They had faced the shadow of danger, the opposition of politics, and the uncertainty of fate. And through it all, they had grown closer, building a bond that neither time nor circumstance could break. On the balcony of the palace, looking over the city lights, Tom felt a sense of peace he had never known. He had entered the life of a princess by accident, but he had found purpose, courage, and belonging. Alira stood beside him, her hand in his, her expression calm and confident. The year is over, she said, but our journey has only begun. Tom smiled, squeezing her hand. Then let's see where it takes us. Together, they turned to watch the twin suns set, ready to face the future side by side as partners in leadership, trust, and perhaps even in love. The empire had changed, and so had they. And for the first time, Tom felt that being in the right place at the wrong time had been the most important accident of his life. The story ends with Tom and Alira standing together, not just as a human and a princess, but as equals, ready to face whatever challenges and adventures the galaxy would bring.